things.
And we'll get into it, but one of my interests with PittMoss is looking at some of the alternative applications
out there.
Yeah. So
Good. All right, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Glenn Zolman. I am with STEM Jobs and had the extreme pleasure of being here today with Brian McCombs and Mark Goldman at PittMoss. Brian is the product manager and Mark is the director of technical services and sales. I think you got those titles right, you guys, right?
Got them.
So glad that you could join us. We're going to be talking about PittMoss and what the company is and does. If you haven't heard of them before, I guarantee you that you will, because that's an amazing product that you guys make, an amazing company, and looking forward to that discussion. So tell me a little bit about your background. Before you came to PittMoss, what did you guys do?
So I have, as we were talking, I have kind of a very eclectic background. I grew up in Northeastern Ohio, went to Leary High School. Out of high school, I actually started out in the Navy ROTC program at Ohio State. Variety of reasons, ended up going to a community college and enlisted in the Marine Corps. So I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, first as an air traffic controller, and then as an officer, supply officer, doing procurement and that sort of thing. And so most recently, as I transitioned out of the Marine Corps for grad school. So now I'm a full-time grad student in studying sustainability and an MBA at Chatham, and had the fortunate opportunity to, through some networking, to end up here at PittMoss. And very exciting opportunity to be involved with a startup that's related to sustainability, related to business, and just so many things that made it a great place to be.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And what's your role here, Brian?
So I'm now the product manager, and one of the things that I've been primarily focused on is business development. So currently, our prime target customer is commercial greenhouse growers, and that's certainly an excellent opportunity for PittMoss. I'm interested in pursuing some of the alternatives, being landscape architecture, so for rain gardens, swales, green roofs, and green infrastructure, and that sort of thing. So I've been doing a lot to explore those opportunities, to network, and to really explore that space.
Great. Sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you? What's your background? You're a little younger than Brian is.
Yes,
so.
Definitely. Yeah. So I became interested in horticulture as a kid. I was involved in scouting and did a lot of camping and making things out of the environment with things like rope tying, and there were many related merit badges that a Boy Scout would get. And then I had my own lawn mowing business, and then I was, went to school, but I wasn't involved in horticulture. I was very interested in social sciences and in industrial sociology and manufacturing, and then went into the Army. And when I got out, I had the opportunity to join a family business in horticulture. So I did that for in excess of 20 some years, and then went to work for we had a soilless mix under our own name that a company made for us, and we got involved with them because we wanted to have control of our own soilless mix business. And then I went to work for this company, being vice president of production there. And they were an industrial manufacturer of some of the traditional ingredients in perlite and vermiculite, and then we brought PittMoss in. And then the opportunity came along to take a look at and evaluate PittMoss, which was being made at a pilot site, and the company where they were customers of mine in our family business and at Thermal Rock, and they came to pick up some perlite for use at the pilot site, And as a result of that, I started asking some questions and gradually got involved in that, doing some setting up trials with local growers who were mixing their own soilless mix, and went on from there. So I'm thoroughly involved in the production, and worked very closely initially with production here. But in addition to that, I had a sales background, so I involved in sales at the soilless mixing company also, and that's partly what I'm doing. That's part of my responsibility here in terms of sales.
You brought up a great point. I think it's important to mention as a startup that we all don't just wear one hat. We do a lot of different things. So starting here, I worked in operations and was very well aligned with my experience as a supply officer, so managing inventories, and we worked very closely to determine quality assurance and quality control and production. And so I've touched on sales, and so we kind of all do a variety of different things. So.
Yeah, that's really common with small companies. Being part of a company like that myself in the past, and now it's everyone wears lots of hats, and you've got to have lots of skills that translate across all kinds of areas. So tell me about PittMoss. So what is PittMoss? How do you make it? So give me the scoop on what you guys do.
So PittMoss is a cellulose-based soil amendment, and it's made from recycling newspaper. So this is kind of an example, and I know that'd be difficult to see on the screen, but this is cellulose fiber, and what we do is we take newspaper. It comes baled, about close to half a ton bale, goes into a series of grinders that separate, process, and fluff it, and then through a series of other steps, we incorporate ingredients and moisture to make a final product that you see here that has really amazing properties for growing plants. It has really great porosity, which is the airspace that plants need to have nutrient exchange at the roots, creates great structure for those roots to develop, and has excellent moisture retention properties. And so one of the amazing things about PittMoss and other sustainable products, we've talked about this, that it's not enough just for something to be, it's made out of recycled goods. It has to work. Right. And to be successful in the market, it has to work better than what's traditionally out there. So some of the feedback we've had from growers is that using PittMoss, they can reduce their watering and fertilizer application up to 50%. In some cases, their plants are maturing up to 25% faster. And so these have real business value. So this isn't just an ideology about recycling sustainability, that there's a business value to the product you make. For me, that's very exciting.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about sort of entrepreneurial things a little bit later, but it's a great point. I mean, we've discussed this as we've kind of come through talking about this over the last few weeks, is what you guys are providing really is a replacement for PittMoss, right? And PittMoss is a commonly used soil additive that helps reduce weight of soil and helps plants grow and things like that. So let's start with why is it important to find something that replaces PittMoss? So why is using PittMoss maybe not the best?
So PittMoss is harvested in Canada. It's also being harvested now that infrastructure has been made in Estonia and Latvia. But originally, PittMoss was used for thatching of roofs because it repels water, and it was used as a fuel, an inexpensive fuel that was available, especially prior to the Industrial Revolution when coal became available. But PittMoss was available, and in the beginnings of the horticultural industry, where you were able to owners were thinking in terms of shipping material. Well, natural soil and sand that was used in the 50s and 40s was not shippable because of weight. So it turned out that Cornell University began doing work with PittMoss. It's a very neutral material, and it can be aerated very well, but certain things had to be done. And at that time, the STEM students, because there have always been STEM students
Absolutely.
fascinated by resourcefulness and technology. And so they saw that if you added a wetting agent to peat moss, it could hold moisture. And because it has a very low pH, you could use lime to raise that pH to about 5.8 to 6.2, which is a healthy environment for plant material to grow. So there was a very practical need that was being made as to how could the industry grow, and the resourcefulness of the science students, the technology students at that time, came up with a very practical material. Since peat moss stores so much carbon, and we don't want to release carbon into the atmosphere, the founder of our company, Mon Hanley, who was working for a garden center at the time, saw all of the peat moss coming into the garden center, and being a resourceful person. And we want to mention that the skills of resourcefulness and creativity are critical to any student who's interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. This resourcefulness is very adaptable to coming up with a better idea. So seeing all of the peat moss that was coming in, Mon said, isn't there a better way? And the light bulb went off as to the possibility of using recycled newspaper. And recycled newspaper is used in the insulation business, but he saw it as an opportunity. So he went back to Purdue, where he was an undergraduate, and worked with the Hort department developing, and it wasn't short term, so patience is very important. It was a 19-year development.
You didn't just get it right instantly, is that what you're saying?
That's right. It took time, and back and forth, and he had a job, so he had to do both, and he was juggling the research with this. And so that's really how PittMoss was discovered, and its moisture holding capacity and aeration are so critical to the grower, because root systems, just like muscle tissue, need as much oxygen and movement of air exchange. So this becomes very critical in horticulture also.
Right. Brian, you and I've talked a lot about the difference between pit moss and peat moss, and obviously, not having to harvest all that peat, not releasing all that carbon into the atmosphere, great environmental impact. But you have a great point about how it's not good enough just to replace a product with something that's environmentally more friendly. You want to speak to that?
So this kind of gets at some of the entrepreneurial aspects. And when you're looking at entering into a marketplace, you have to be able to overcome switching costs, which means there's a product that someone's already using and it works for them. Why are they going to go to your product when they don't know how it's going to work for them? And so when you're entering the marketplace with a product, you've got to be able to not only meet the current standard, but then exceed it. And so that you can see that in a variety of industries, from tech to everywhere else.
So I'll just interject. One of the responsibilities I had, because at the pilot plant, we could put on considerable volumes of water, but water is very expensive to ship. So my responsibility was, how do we maintain all of the virtues of PittMoss, but can we reduce the volume of water? So there was a lot of practical trial and error in our lab, so to speak, reducing it and still saying yes, go, and working with the growers and coming up with a formula that was both economically affordable, but also still kept all of the qualities of PittMoss.
Now, I wish I would have had some forethought. I would have set up a little demonstration here, but it's really dramatic to compare different materials and how well how poorly they absorb water. And one of the things we always demonstrate with PittMoss is a drop test. So if we set out some cups of water and you drop straight peat moss in with no surfactants or chemical agents added, it would sit on top of that water and float there pretty much most of the day.
They have to put an additive in to make it absorb water.
Right, hydrophobic. In the same way, if you would take this raw paper cellulose fiber and put that on the water. It would do similarly the same thing. It would sit on top. It would eventually soak in. Then you take the PittMoss, and within 4 to 5 seconds, it would completely absorb into that.
So one of the things to think about is we are all concerned about the environment. So if science can make an improvement on Mother Nature, that's remarkable. So by using recycled newspaper, which comes from trees, we're taking material that in recycling it, using the skills that students develop in their education, we can see that we can make improvements, and that's what we've done. PittMoss can be used with PittMoss in many situations to replace it. So understanding the nature of newspaper, understanding the nature of PittMoss, one of the improvements that's made is in Mother Nature, everything isn't consistent or uniform. But when you're working with technology, with machinery, you can do that. So right. PittMoss tends to vary in consistency, but PittMoss is very consistent, one manufacturing time after another. And that's important to growers. Reliability is very important.
Right. You guys really, go ahead.
I was just going to say, talking about the difference between a natural product and one that's manufactured, you get to control the variables.
Yeah.
So whereas you may have sticks and twigs or other things that are, get in the way when you're starting seedlings, the manufactured products, you get to control that consistency.
Yeah.
So our industry is very concerned in demanding of us pathogen-free materials.
Right.
It makes it easier, it reduces costs, and so this is part of the technology.
So what you've developed, it's environmentally friendly, which is amazing. It's sustainable, so reutilizing materials that are there, but also cutting costs, being more effective. Mm-hmm. I know that we can't right now, but I think what we'll do, if you watch this later, or if you go to your guys' website, I'm sure you guys can see some examples. You're showing us a picture of the flowers in your product versus others. It really is remarkable in terms of it's not just a better, not just a replacement for PittMoss. It's a much better product, which is I think is really awesome. But so I'm getting the cue from our production team that we got to kind of get rolling.
So Glenn, to get back to your question that you'd asked about my background and how that fit in the challenges, my undergrad degree was in international studies, and I minored in Persian. And this is mostly due to the fact that I was on active duty, and I saw myself having a very long military career. And when I started to become aware of the issues around sustainability is where I actually decided to make a career change. But the skills that I gained in the military were actually I attribute to most of my success, my approach to things. So the problem solving that you mentioned, the communication, and the ability really to ask good questions and to seek out the people who know a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be the guy with all the ideas and the smartest person in the room, but you have to know how to find the smartest people. And so really just being able to ask those questions and to learn quickly and be a lifelong learner, really.
Yeah, being inquisitive and seeking out the answers. I think we have both touched on the need to look at things kind of the way they are and sort of think, well, why can't I make that better? Ask the right questions in that process.
So where does creativity come into place? When the light bulb goes off, whether someone is a scientist or an artist, whatever field, the resourcefulness, the understanding of how to problem solve, when the light bulb goes off, you get a great idea. Part of it is inspiration, but then you have to figure how do all of the other disciplines, the training you've had, how do they apply to make this idea become very practical? And that's what happened with PittMoss. When Mont Hanley saw PittMoss in its abundance and being concerned about the environment, and then he actually put newspaper into a food processor.
Right.
And his mother said, "You're a bachelor, you need to learn how to cook." So how the idea was, wait a minute, I'm going to take some newspaper and put it into the food processor. So that was the creativity. Now problem solving, the resourcefulness, now all of the training had to come into place. So it all goes hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And I'm always drawn to like the entrepreneurial aspects of things, and I think it's really important to recognize that you don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper and think that you have to generate this novel idea that no one's ever thought of. In fact, if you have an idea that no one's thought of before, you might need to investigate a little further.
Right.
No one else has done that. But so you can expand upon what's already been accomplished, and you can find spaces where there's.
So we talk about entrepreneurship, and I mentioned that I joined a family horticultural company. Originally, that business was started by one individual pitching a tent and being determined to create a new industry. So entrepreneurial skills and resourcefulness go way, way back.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think about in terms of like starting, like you're right about, you don't have to have a blank, paper and create something out of nothing. It's GPS is a technology developed by the military years and years and years ago for general navigation and things. And now everybody uses GPS all the time. I use it to get here. People use it to find restaurants that are nearby. Like they're talking about. And I think that's one of the things. STEM is often referred to. A lot of schools will have STEAM programs. They add that's an amazing. Being a music teacher in my early years of education, the arts are such an outlet for STEM skill. It really is kind of the place where all the cool things that we do in STEM get displayed. I know that you had talked a lot about reaching out to organizations around landscaping, and beautifying different areas and regions, and that's a very creative, artistic use of these kinds of things as well. So absolutely, creativity is a critical piece of it.
So our business is flowers and vegetables, and of course we're dealing with how science can make improvements and make more food available, and area beautification. So when do we do a shout out?
Shout out right now. Go for it.
Okay, so I want to do a shout out to Gail Sestito, who teaches robotics, and that's my shout out to my daughter. Greenwich Academy, yes.
Hi to Gail.
If we wanted to answer any questions,
we've got some questions that have been kind of coming in. So
sure.
I think you guys have addressed sort of the first one.
The first question is asked: is there any actual soil in PittMoss? And so natural soil is comprised primarily of what you might think of as decaying rock, so minerals, air, and water, and then about 5% organic material, which is plant matter and that sort of thing. When you talk about soilless mixes, you don't have the mineral component. So by definition, PittMoss is 100% organic in the chemical sense. It's organic material. So no, there's no soil in PittMoss or in other soilless mixes.
But other ingredients that have been a traditional part in the development of the Cornell mix, vermiculite is mined and comes from the environment, and perlite, these ores come from the environment.
Sure.
Yeah.
So at 100%, no. But for the other question is related to blends or models. And so this is where the customer, based on their application needs, whether that's for pH or the physical structure, you might have a customer that mixes PittMoss with bark. You might have a customer that does use some peat, but it is able to reduce the amount of peat that they're using in an existing mix. And so it's pretty much limitless in the way that it can be configured to meet specific applications.
So it's very flexible, and that it can be just used in all kinds of different ways depending on what the needs are for that growing environment.
Yeah. And so one of the other questions that came in is, was there discouragement in the development? I would rather use the term frustration, and if you use the frustration that you deal with and are optimistic, you overcome the obstacles and the discouraging things. Yeah. But there are a lot of unknowns, so you bring your creativity and your resourcefulness, your problem-solving skills, and then we work as a team. So we talk about our frustration, and you overcome that discouragement But to answer the question, yes. But if you have a strong sense of optimism that you're going to get there,
yeah,
you do.
And a lot of, I speak personally, a lot of some of the frustrations were even in the manufacturing. So you have this idea, you put a series of equipment together and, start up and things are going to work perfect. Well, it doesn't happen.
Right.
So there's a lot of problem solving, troubleshooting, process improvement, all these things to get the product to the consistency, the quality, a lot of very practical, nitty gritty things to work out. Malfunctions and
I'm sure you guys are
maintenance.
always trying to work to make it better too. I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people think that once you get it done, then you sit back and enjoy the piles of cash that are coming in.
Right.
No, you're always working to make it better. Right?
And with a startup, if we have equipment breaks down, oh well, this is someone else's job. No, there's no one else, so you're doing it.
So I have as a youngster, I was very interested in automobiles, and I worked replacing brakes, doing transmissions. And I brought all of those tools. I don't ever throw valuable things, your lab, those things out, because the tools came in handy. Some of them were very adaptable. And we've stayed very much in contact with the engineers who helped us at our pilot plant. We have a continual dialogue, and that's what's so good about with the engineering community. We're working with mushroom growers now, and one of the mushroom growers was very concerned about yield, so he's sponsoring out of his own pocket a research program through Penn State University. So these are things how all of this goes hand in hand, nurturing one another, and they're nurturing us. I get continually suggestions from scientists and engineers about, hey, would you consider this and try this? So it all goes, it's very rewarding.
Right. And you asked about some of the challenges not coming from a STEM background. And one of those things is in conversation with potential customers or other people that I'm communicating with, I'm always taking notes. A customer asks about bulk density. I'm like, I need to go look up bulk density. I don't know what that is. So next time I'm better prepared.
Right.
But being able to learn quickly and to identify what are those relevant technical aspects and fill in the gaps in your knowledge.
Right. Yeah. You guys have brought up a lot of things that a lot of the skills, resourcefulness, persistence, creativity, ingenuity, that are really important, along with obviously the science that you really dig into, and Mark, that from your extensive background. But what advice might you give teachers about how they can help students develop some of those skills and work on some of those things? I know there's a lot of, being a teacher myself, you're always looking for ways to really engage your students in projects that help develop their skills, and sometimes it can be kind of scary. But Brian, you had one earlier that you were talking about.
Yeah,
that was pretty interesting.
So this whole idea of being a young person and trying to figure out what you want to do with your life and where you want to go, resonates with me very deeply, because I think most of my life I haven't known what I want to do when I grow up. And when you're coming from high school or earlier age, you're just throwing darts at a wall. You don't really know what's out there. And one of the things that I thought of that actually would be beneficial, might be an exercise teachers could take students through, is take a common object that you're familiar with. It could be a smartphone, and really go through the process of what it took to get that in your hand, from the raw materials to the job, and then what happens when you get rid of it. Because we're, as consumers, we're in contact with things for a very short period of time, and we think of things being thrown out and it's away. We don't necessarily consider the whole life cycle of a product. And that's a great place to start, because then you're going to identify where things can be improved. You're going to identify jobs that you didn't even know existed. You're going to understand your impact on the world around you a lot more, and be a lot more responsible in many ways. So that's one recommendation.
Yeah.
So we live in a country with a great deal of abundance, but many of our parents and grandparents would say, waste not, want not. And so all of the products that we're throwing out, they have, in the state of Pennsylvania and throughout the country, there's marvelous, just terrific programs of recycling. And there are sales fellows out there encouraging different companies to look at opportunities to recycle their products. So there are recycled metals, recycled glass, recycled aluminum, recycled newspaper, and more with resourcefulness. we will figure out more and more ways to recycle and work for sustainability. And of course, that's what PittMoss is all about.
Right. And yeah, I think those are key points. And the idea about looking at the life cycle of a product, that's what business owners have to do. You got to look at, if I'm going to make this, like, how do I get it to here? How do I get it out to people? And then a lot of the opportunity that often they might miss comes on what happens after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were talking before that's where a lot of the jobs of the future are going to exist. Is, we have a billion smartphones out there. What are we going to do with all of that glass, all the batteries, all of the?
There's actually more gold in a ton of e-waste, electronic waste, than ore. So there's a lot of visionaries that think we'll be mining trash dumps for resources in the future.
You have a whole bunch of kids now that are going to be going out and digging through piles of old cell phones. So, so maybe the last thing, just in terms of starting a business and being an entrepreneur, is like, I want to give a shout out actually to our partner 4-H. Thank them for inviting some students. I know their membership is highly interested in agriculture, as well as other things, but there's a lot of those students out there that have that entrepreneurial kind of mindset, and are looking for any advice that you guys might give them about how can they go from where they are at and start their own company.
So in terms of agriculture, this was actually my first interest in sustainability, was sustainable agriculture. And there's a book actually I highly recommend by Joel Salatin called You Can Farm. And so this book kind of gives practical advice and really kind of just helps you think through if this is something you're suited for. And some of the things he really recommends is, one, don't go in debt. If you have, especially in agriculture, just, try to bootstrap as much as you can. If things do with what you have, where you're at. So that's one recommendation. The other thing in terms of agriculture is find out where the value add is. So this is just one example, you could grow cucumbers and sell them 50 cents a piece, or you could turn those into pickles and sell it for $5 a jar.
Right.
So adding value to finished products is one way. But for a farmer, any way you can have direct sales to a customer is a huge opportunity. And there's such a market for local, sustainable crafts products.
Right.
That's one avenue.
And the entrepreneurial resourceful quality comes in different stages. It may be blossoming as a youngster, but then when one is out of college or working, an idea can develop. So entrepreneurial drive can strike one at many points in one's life, and my suggestion is go for it. Sometimes at a later point, you are more in a position to be entrepreneurial. The founder of PittMoss didn't do this right away, but saved some money. And then when he felt he could purchase the equipment that he needed, he relied on investment companies to do that. So the opportunities are there. So again, there are different stages in development, but if someone is a little bit apprehensive at this point, then keep pursuing, and then the opportunity for the light bulb going off and becoming an entrepreneur can occur at that point. And
you had mentioned there are oftentimes some organizations out there that might help entrepreneurial companies get a boost, right?
Absolutely. So here in Pittsburgh, we have a really great entrepreneurial, really kind of mindset. And there's a lot of what are called startup incubators, and they can take you an idea from just the spark of an idea to a product or service that you've already started to develop, and we'll walk you through the steps of actually taking something to market. So through the funding of it, to the legal aspect, to the marketing, branding, the actual R&D. And so here in Pittsburgh, there's a number of them, from the Idea Foundry, there's a tech shop, and many cities and places are going to have resources like that.
So Innovation Works, which is funded by the state of Pennsylvania, is one of our funders, and they're very much involved in helping us bring our product to market. There was a training program in making presentations to investors. So these programs do exist.
So we really encourage youngsters that they're looking at starting something like that to seek out those kind of partners.
And the other thing too, it's great about like technology and things being, so many resources online, is crowdfunding. you have access to money and capital to get things started in a way that we've never had before. So Kickstarter and those types of things are.
So there's a question about, are there any potential internships?
I think of times all the time, every day, where I could use an intern.
Yeah.
But no, there's certainly will be an opportunity for that, and I hope to have some of those.
So Brian should mention that he mentioned he's a graduate student, so he's not a full-time employee here at PittMoss, but there are opportunities, and as we grow, there may be considerable opportunities for internships.
And I imagine that pretty much any company, especially a young startup company, will be looking for people that are passionate, driven, hardworking, thoughtful. All those kind of skills that we've been talking about would be like the ideal people to come maybe knock on your door. Okay. What's your website, guys, so people can come find you?
It's PittMoss.com.
Okay, great. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure talking to you guys about PittMoss and about your experiences as you've gone from, you guys both started in the military and through different, very kind of, your route was a little more straightforward, but yours, Brian, like mine, was a little more circuitous all over the place. And it's been really a pleasure to talk to you guys and appreciate your time today.
Likewise. Thanks.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.